I'm Parson Michael Malley, and this is Dharma Talks from Sacred Ground. Reflections and meditations brought to you from the Sacred Ground Community Church and Sangha. Today's Dharma Talk was originally shared on November 28th, 2021. A couple of days ago, and thank you, Miss Holly. A couple of days ago, I was looking up the word Advent in the dictionary, and I realized, and you could think about this, what word is kind of like Advent, or what would have the same root as Advent? Adventure. And I thought that's kind of a neat way of thinking of this season, to sort of open ourselves to adventure. And it sounds like something they'd say in church, because people don't feel that at this time of year, right? It's like, oh gosh, I got to get this done, and I got to get that done, and I got to get online and order that, and oh, it's Cyber Monday, and it was just Black Friday, and I've got to da-da-da-da, and we had all the people over then, and there's this party next week, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and that certainly sounds like the antithesis, the opposite of adventure. Being harried and hurried. And one of the great gifts that the spiritual path that we've been on, where we're melding traditions, one of the great gifts that it gives us is that sometimes you'll find something in one tradition that kind of illuminates something that was a little bit hidden in another tradition. And sometimes they seem to be in contrast with each other. Certainly, we would think of the holiday season, the Christmas season, the Advent season as a season of hope, of what may be. And here we have this gentle Vietnamese monk telling us, yeah, be careful. Hope can be an obstacle. That's actually a good example of why I enjoy blending these traditions. Because they're invited into dialogue with each other, and then, of course, they're invited into dialogue within me. I'm invited to think to myself how much I lean into hope, and how in some ways that's awesome. And then where might it not be? Because if I'm only dwelling in hope, then I'm trying to dwell in the future. I'm not being present to this moment right now. If I'm anxious over what present I should get this person and worrying about all that, where is my presence? No pun was intended there. Where is my presence with that person? Where is the right nowness of things? We devote a lot of time and energy to, we're going to create this special meal. We just had the Thanksgiving holiday. You might celebrate, Christmas Eve, Christmas meal, or other ways that you might be celebrating solstice and having a gathering with friends, or Hanukkah and gathering with family. But how much of the time, how much of the energy is bent towards what will be, rather than what is? And in the moment of the gathering, Ollie spoke of this. I'm breathing, I'm mindful, and then I forget. But can we be mindful to what's happening right now? And with the Christmas season or with the holiday season, there's another element to this too. There's the past, there's the history, there's the memories. We have our eldest daughter is in her early 30s. We have 2 kiddos in college and one who's now in high school age. Boy, I loved when they were little kiddos, running down the stairs on Christmas morning. And there's a piece of me that mourns that misses that. I can feel it. I could feel the emotion welling up in me as I share that with you. That's not a bad thing. But there's also another piece of me that's watching our 2 kiddos in from their 2 different colleges, gathering in the kitchen, the siblings visiting with each other, and then our eldest has 3 children, and then them coming into play. And what's happening right now? Looking over at your partner, if you have a partner, as you're sitting together, singing an old carol, or just enjoying a walk out in the cold, or with an old buddy, right now. And along with that past and along with that present, also leaning into that future. That near future of just a couple of weeks, few weeks, when the babe is born in the manger again. But then the future beyond that, where those little kiddos, like I spoke of our 3 grandchildren, growing up and watching how they grow and change. My mom's 92. She's a smoker. It's amazing that she's still around. She does not inhale, so if you're a smoker, please stop inhaling. But one of the things, she's like, I'm ready to go. But one of the things she keeps saying is, well, I like being here because I'm curious about what's going to happen with the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren. And she has lots of them. I think that maybe is that beneficial hope. That ideal, those ideals that so many of us hold or share of. We were in a conversation about this last night with our college-age daughter and our high school-age son, of like what society could be, what we might be in the future, and what steps we can take to get there. That's all good. But don't lose presence. I spoke of Advent and adventure, and I said, the harried, hurried, this way and that, being pulled in different directions and all stressed out. That doesn't sound like adventure. And I think that while adventure does have this like going forward idea, it also has a presence to it. I think of when I was in my early 20s, 24 to 25, I traveled around Europe for about 9 months. That was an adventure. But there's so many moments that I still share or think about that were just these beautiful moments on a train, or with some people I had met in Paris, or working in Ireland. Part of the adventure is embracing the presence of the adventure. It's not all about getting to this place. It's the path along the way as well. Emmanuel means God is among us. O come, Emmanuel. Come, God presence. But then Thich Nhat Hanh will tell us, I can tell you where the Jesus and Buddha live. I even have their zip code. Right here. Right here in the laugh of your friend. Right here in the smiling eyes of that little one in your life. Right here in that little touch of an elder. And so I invite us into the both and. And in some ways, the reading from Luke today is very befitting for that. Because it's all about this, Mary's going to have this baby. And Elizabeth, and for those of you, if you're not that deep into the Christian tradition, Elizabeth is the mother of John the Baptist. So when she feels that leaping within her, that's John the Baptist within her. And I was thinking, years ago, we have one of our nieces is just a little bit older than our eldest daughter. And I was together, I think it was in the Pittsburgh area, with family, and my wife Ollie and Jasmine weren't with us. And we were joking around or whatever. And when these kiddos were little, they were really close. They're not that close today. Often happens, right? But when they were little kiddos, they hung out and they loved being together. And so our niece Katie and our daughter Jasmine were really good buddies as little ones, as little kiddos in elementary school. And I was joking around with Katie, and Katie said to me in the car, I don't know if she would remember this, I don't know how old she was, 7, 8 years old, maybe 9. And she was just kind of being playful and teasing. She goes, oh yeah, Uncle Mike, Jazz and I, we planned that all out before we were born. That we'd be both born into these, in these two families, and then we'd come together. And that really touched, and she was, and I played it up. I said, oh really? And we kind of had this dialogue back and forth. And I played it up because it really touched my heart, because Jazz is my stepdaughter. And I didn't come into her life until she was 5 years old. And so this little thought of like, that this was all prearranged, it touched my spirit, right? And as I said, Jasmine and my wife Ollie, they weren't with me on that trip. And I came home and I told that story to Ollie, and her eyes got wide. And she said, I don't remember the exact details, we were trying to piece this together earlier, but she said something like this. She said, Michael, this past weekend, Jazz was talking to me about how before she was born, she was planning on me being her mother. We only find this story of Elizabeth and Mary in the Gospel of Luke. whether this really took place or whether this is a story to raise our spirits, I don't get to know that. But all of a sudden, when I remember that, when that little one inside of Elizabeth jumps in reaction to his cousin inside Mary, it makes some sense to me. And I also realize that in that moment, neither Elizabeth nor Mary are focused on the future, which will be astounding and harrowing. In that moment, Elizabeth is doing what Ollie asked us to do earlier. She is completely aware of her body. And she is completely present to what is happening in the moment. And after Elizabeth shares this with Mary, Mary shares this beautiful prayer, really. And it's called the Magnificat. And it's sometimes called a psalm, the Psalm of Mary. It's not in the book of Psalms. This is in Luke. But Mary is talking to God and talks about He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy. And we should remember here, we're talking about Israel as this very weak little group of people, not as a superpower at this point in history. Mary's not talking about you or me getting to heaven. I'm not talking about us being in the one group, the in group, and not in the out group. Mary's talking about this time when the hungry are filled with good things. And she's speaking of it as already happening. And what's cool is this Magnificat has parallels with, if we go back to the Hebrew Bible and the book of Samuel, and the prophet Samuel's mother Hannah speaks something very similar. And most biblical scholars think that this was taken and put in the book of Samuel, and that it's much older than that. And so there's this connection of the past and towards the future, and this all melding and blending together into one. That's what this season is. Those little stories of young Katie and young Jasmine, who are now these young women. Those stories are still alive in my heart. This praise song of Mary and this leaping of the child in Elizabeth's womb. These have been talked about and thought about. These stories for hundreds of years before we were born. And in all likelihood, they will continue to be mused on for centuries after we're gone. And in the midst of it all, here we are, called into looking forward, being on the Advent adventure, but also, so importantly, called into this present moment right now. Personally, I love this season. But I think one of the keys for me is not just planning this or doing that, but being here. Being here with you, being here with my friends, being here with our loved ones right now. I'm Parson Michael Malley, and you've been listening to Dharma Talks from Sacred Ground.